What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Crypto Crossroads. And today, let's talk about the Redbelly Network and its recognition by Quant's founder, Gilbert Verdian. But before we get started, do me a quick favor and hit the like and subscribe button, and we can get the show started. Alrighty, so in the past, we have talked about the Redbelly Network and how it's been in existence since 2016. It was created by the University of Sydney in Australia and also an Australian government agency, right? And this project is actually hyper focused on real world assets, right? And it is achieving clean liquidity in a compliant manner. But today's video is going to focus on the co-development of Redbelly through these two organizations that I just mentioned, and also the recognition by Quant's co-founder Gilbert Verdian. So let's first talk about CSIRO. And as you guys can see, CSIRO is part of the Australian government, right? And they posted on LinkedIn that Redbelly Network was co-developed by CSIRO and the University of Sydney, right? So it's these two organizations that came together with this professor of the University of Sydney to create the Redbelly Network. So, in other words, there's a lot of money going into this project, and it's in the best interest of the Australian government for this project, the Redbelly Network, to succeed. And as I said, it's been around since 2016, and we're in 2025, so it's been in existence for at least 9 years. And they actually received a USA patent for the technology back in 2024. Now let's talk about the University of Sydney, right? And here we have a individual who is a professor at this university, and his name is Vincent Gramoli. And he's actually the founder and CTO of the Redbelly Network, right? And he is the head of the Concurrent Systems Research Group at the University of Sydney. And also, he has chaired the Cybersecurity Committee for the Computing Research and Education Association in Australasia. Okay. Now, you can also see that he received some type of award from CSIRO, which is the government agency of Australia. Now, that is part of the story. Let's take a closer look at CSIRO, which is used to go by the name of Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization, but now it's referred to as Australia's National Science Agency, right? Which is part of the Australian government. Now, we know that this uh, branch is backing and funding the Redbelly network, but previous to Redbelly and working on blockchain, CSIRO has achieved many great accomplishments. And one of them is something that we all use today in this modern era, right? So let's talk about that. And you'll see here on the screen that CSIRO actually invented Wi Fi, right? And it reads right here on their website: we invented and patented wireless local area network, WLAN for short, in the 1990s, a technology that has given us the freedom to work wirelessly in our homes and offices, right? So, if you guys are older, you guys know that before we had Wi Fi, we had to, if you wanted to go online, you had to take your telephone line, disconnect it from your phone, and connect it to your device, which meant you couldn't receive phone calls because your phone device was not connected to, the telephone line. But that's back in the day, something that we don't really see often today, unless you have a landline. But yeah, right. So before Redbelly, CSIRO created Wi-Fi, and now is working on Redbelly as of 2016 when the project got incubated along with the University of Sydney. So, in other words, we could say that Australia honestly created Wi-Fi. So now it's going from Wi-Fi to DeFi with the Redbelly Network, right? So I told you guys that the co-founder of this project is Vincent Gramoli, right? And he has a knowledge in the cybersecurity field. Now, guess who else is an expert in cybersecurity? Yep, no other than Gilbert Verdian, who is the founder of Quant, right? And back in 2025, which wasn't too long ago, on May 3rd, Gilbert Verdian posted on Twitter, "Glad to know and have met the Redbelly team from my time in the Australian government in 2016 when it was incubated in the Data 61 slash CSIRO government research agency." Okay, so here we have Gilbert stating that he has been aware of the Redbelly team since 2016 because, of course, Redbelly is founded headquartered in Australia, and Gilbert worked in the Australian government back in 2016. And we'll talk about that employment shortly. But first, let me show you guys a clip from Gilbert Verdian, also talking about the Redbelly Network team back in May 15, 2019, I believe. Let's take a look.
People trying to do things with it, and so yeah. But you don't just use Bitcoin. You use other blockchains for different purposes. If you need to do something fast, you don't use Bitcoin. You use hedera hashgraph, for example. And there's another blockchain that's come out of Australia called Redbelly, out of a university there, which the government has taken on. That's got 600,000 transactions a second. That's Redbelly blockchain.
Yeah, I know it's definitely an interesting Australian project.
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So that was Gilbert Verdian from the Quant Network. And under the same breath, he acknowledged the Redbelly Network along with hedera hashgraph, right? And that was back in 2019, 3 years after Redbelly was formed. So he kind of mentioned that Redbelly had the ability to transact about, I think he said 600,000 transactions, which is quite a lot of transactions, right? So he knew of this project since 2016 and mentioned it on video back in 2019. Now, I did tell you guys that Gilbert is the founder and CEO of Quant Network, right? Which is created to make an interconnected world, right? Through different blockchains. And I mentioned to you guys that Gilbert is an expert in cybersecurity, given that he has 20 years of experience, right? And he's also been accomplished the C-level accountability as a CISO, CIO, and CTO. And he has worked for many different government agencies in the UK and Australia, right? And he's also worked for the private sector for Mastercard, Vocalink, and many other companies, including the PwC, which is a top accounting firm, and also a huge bank called HSBC. Now, obviously, from his employment, we know that Gilbert has lived around the world, and here it states that he's been to the UK, Australia, Asia, Europe, and the US. So that's pretty much the whole world, basically, right? Not really, but you know what I mean. And okay, so let's talk about his employment at those certain government positions, right? So let's start off with the HM Treasury, which is actually the government's economic and finance ministry for the UK. So that's one. His second employment position was at the cabinet office, which supports the prime minister and ensures the effective running of the government. And again, that was for the UK. That's the second employment. His third government job was at the Ministry of Justice for the UK, and the last government employment he had was for the NSW Health, which is the New South Wales, I believe, which is an Australian state, right? So that's probably around 2016 when he took this position, and that's probably the time that he came across the Redbelly team. Now, a little bit more about Quant. because I know a lot of you are um, bullish on this project, and I can't blame you guys, right? And I'll tell you guys a little side story about this project that is not really funny, but it's interesting. So let's talk about Quant briefly, and it is actually utilized by central banks and global financial institutions. Having worked, Quant has worked with the digital pound, the digital euro, and the UK RLN, right? So it's working with corporations, banks, and capital markets to enable and increase liquidity. Okay, so now let me tell you guys that story about Quant. So a lot of times I known about projects that I think are promising, but I never really pull the trigger and get me a position, right? And a couple years ago, when Quant went down to 50, $60 per coin, I had a coworker who was there on a temporary contract, I guess you could say, and he kept telling me, he kept talking to me about crypto. And to my surprise, not many people talk about it, so I was just taken aback. And we just kept discussing crypto projects that we liked, but he was really bullish on Quant. And he kept telling me, man, you need to buy some. Get you some. It's like 55, $60 right now. You should buy you some. We're about to get paid. And I said, yeah, like I want to get some, but I'm filling up some of the bags, so I'll eventually get to it. And he kept telling me over and over for like a period of 4 or 5 weeks, hey man, did you buy some? Did you buy some? I bought some more. Did you buy some? And I just kept brushing it off, and I told him that I was gonna buy some. Now, given that it was 50, $60 per coin, I thought I had time, and I knew how bullish the project is, and it's still relatively cheap today, in my opinion. But I didn't buy, and by the 6 or 7 week, uh, Quant pretty much did a 2x and went straight to like $120, or maybe a little higher than that. And he kind of asked me with a grin, after Quant went up, but he asked me, "Did you buy?" And I just told him, nah, man, like I messed up. Right. So that's just a little side story. I'm not trying to give up financial advice, like, that you should buy. But for me, a lot of times when I had a conviction or like a gut feeling about a project and I didn't pull the trigger, it eventually went up and I lost potential gains. Right. But that's just a little side story. So now, I want to play that clip again from Gilbert Verdian because I find it to be a quite interesting remark from such an established player in the crypto space. But before we do me a quick favor, hit the like and subscribe button, and we can get to that clip. Let's take a look.
As people trying to do things with it, and so yeah, but you don't just use Bitcoin. You use other blockchains for different purposes. If you need to do something fast, you don't use Bitcoin. You use hedera hashgraph, for example. And there's another blockchain that's come out of Australia called Redbelly, out of a university there, which the government has taken on. That's got 600,000 transactions a second. That's Redbelly blockchain.
Yeah, I know it's definitely an interesting Australian project.
Yes. Because
Okay, so we watched that clip for a second time, and I don't know Gilbert's stance on Bitcoin. I'm pretty sure he finds it favorable, uh, depending on what the topic is, right? But he states in this video, at least back in 2019, that Bitcoin isn't really his first choice if he wants to process something real fast, maybe like such as a payment, right? And that there are better options such as Hedera Hashgraph and the Redbelly Network, right? So that's something that really captivated my attention because I'm already bullish on Redbelly Network, but the fact that it's somebody so established in the community knew about Redbelly back in 2016 and that he spoke about it in good light makes me a little bit more bullish on the Redbelly Network, right? And there, I mean, after all, it's backed by the Australian government and a very respected university, which is the University of Sydney in Australia. So there you have it, guys. Redbelly Network was born out of the University of Sydney and CSIRO, who invented Wi-Fi back around the early 2000s or late 1990s. So pretty much Australia is going from Wi-Fi to DeFi with blockchain. And in this case, in this particular video, we're talking about Redbelly Network. So as always, guys, I just want to say thank you for tuning in. Remember that God is good, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.